Hey everyone, Kyle Lewis here from the Worship Keyboard Tutorial YouTube channel, wishing you a Happy New Year. Well, it was 1 year ago, January 1st, 2022, that I put out my first official video on the Worship Keyboard Tutorial YouTube channel. And since it's our birthday, I thought it would be fitting to show you how to play Happy Birthday. Because as piano players, we often get asked to play Happy Birthday whether we're at a party, or at the office, or even at church. So I'm going to show you how to play Happy Birthday, starting with some really basic fundamental chords, all the way up onto different levels on how to jazz it up. But before we get started, if you haven't subscribed, hit that subscribe button and that little notification bell so that you can be aware of future videos. And if you like this video, give us a thumbs up. Alright, if you're ready, let's get started. Now there's a free PDF that you can get by clicking the link below, and it has all the things that I'm playing in this video. So let's start with the first one, which is basic chords. Well, if you've been watching my channel at all, you know that we can play a lot of songs with just 3 chords, the 1, the 4, and the 5. And Happy Birthday is no exception. We can play Happy Birthday with those 3 chords, the 1, the 4, and the 5. We're going to be in the key of F. So F is our 1 chord, B flat is our 4 chord, and C is our 5 chord. Now we're not going to play them in that order. We're going to follow the sequence of Happy Birthday. So let me play through the basic structure of Happy Birthday, and then I'll break down the chord progression. So you saw that we used the F chord, the B flat chord, and the C chord, but in a little different order. So we go from this F chord. Now this melody goes up to D, so I like to go to the regular B flat chord. We could go, but I like to go to that B flat chord. Then it goes to that C chord. Back to the F. Now here I use the 3rd in the bass on the F. It just has a nice little climb up to that B flat. But here we have a really interesting chord. We have an E natural in the melody. So I'm going to use my G here to kind of climb down like this. So instead of playing like a B flat chord like this, where I have F down here, F, B flat, E, I'm going to use that G. I just like the sound of that better, but if you want to use the F, you can. Then I go to my B flat chord up here, F, C or C7, down to the F chord. Let me play that all in context one more time. So the first level of jazzing things up is going to be a grace note. Now a grace note is simply just a quick movement from one note to another. And we think of it kind of flicking from one note to another. You can use them that are a whole step apart, or you can use them that are half step apart. We're going to use the half step because it gives a little more funky bluesy sound. Now when you're going from a black note to a white note, like I am here, instead of using 2 fingers, you can actually slide. Sometimes sliding is a little bit easier, especially if you're doing things quickly. And we're going to use that grace note in the context of the F chord. So listen to it without the grace note. Now listen to it with the grace note. It's subtle, but it's just a little bit of a funky characteristic. Now when I get back to this F chord, I'm going to use my thumb to slide. Because my F is in a different inversion here, I'm going to use my thumb to slide off that. And then when I get back to here, I'm going to use that thumb again to slide. So let's hear all of that in context. Now the next level of jazzing it up is going to be using a moving bass line. Let me play it for you first so you can hear it, and then I'll break down what the concept is. So we're going to continue to use our grace notes. Did you hear those moving bass lines? What I did is I used a chromatic approach. That means I'm using half steps to get to the bass note that I want to. My target bass note is C, and I'm going to approach that by 2 half steps below. And I'm going to walk that up. So regardless of what I'm doing in my right hand, I'm using my left hand to move up in that chromatic movement. So listen to that first one. Now it has kind of this triplet feel. Triplet bomb. So my right hand plays triplet. So the pullet is in my left hand. Triplet bomb, and then I'm on my C chord. Listen to that again. Triplet bomb. And I use that same movement getting to my F chord. I'm using 2 half steps below to get to my F, and I'm using that same triplet feel. Triplet. Now listen to those two in context. Now I'm only using it in the first half of the song. I'm not using it to every approach. So we want to kind of use it sparingly. We don't want to overdo that bass movement. But that's a really nice movement to get from that F chord to the C, and then from the C back to the F. Now another way that we can jazz things up is to use passing chords, or what we might call neighbor chords. And I've talked about that in another video, and I'll put a link up here so that you can see that. Basically it means that if I'm on a chord like a C chord, instead of just staying on that C chord, I'm going to move outside of that C chord to another chord and then come back. So I'm going to play my C chord, but I'm going to move out, and I'm going to move everything to that D minor chord here. I've got a D minor chord and then back to C. I'm still technically in C, but I'm using that to just kind of get outside to add a little bit more variety and a little more movement. So let's hear that first one. So you hear I'm going to that D minor chord and then back to C. And now I'm going to go to my F chord. And I go up to that B flat chord. I'm still technically in F, but I'm using that B flat as a little bit of variety, a little bit of movement. Let's hear the first half of that again. And again, I'm only using that in the first half of the song like I did with the bass notes. Now once you get all that down, if you still want to take it to the next level, you can use a chord substitution. Now just in full disclosure, a lot of these ideas I've gotten from Richard T. from his video Contemporary Piano. And he uses a lot of these funky things and these chord substitutions that I'm playing in this. And if I find that video, I'll put a link in there. But a chord substitution basically is, instead of playing a normal chord, I'm using a whole different chord. Now I'm going to play it for you, and I want to see if you can tell me where that chord substitution is. Did you hear where that chord was? It was this chord here. Now this is technically what's called an E flat 9 chord. So it's an E flat chord, but it has that 9 and that dominant 7. So I've got my E flat here in the bass, and I've got all my other chord notes up here. Okay? So instead of playing my B flat chord here, I'm playing my E flat 9 chord. Okay? So it has the same melody note, and it also has one other note from my chord, that F here. Also, you may have noticed what I was doing was I'm using what's called a palm slide. I'm using the palm of my hand to slide up. A lot of organists use a palm slide. And it's kind of a glissando effect, but it smashes a lot of notes at once. Now in classical music, we would do a glissando usually with the back of our hand like this. But if you're trying to go from here to a chord, it's a little more difficult to slide up this way. If you're using a palm slide, watch my hand. My fingers are already in place to play this chord. So there's your chord substitution. So now that you've got all that worked out, how do we end the song? Well, I'm going to show you a very typical, stereotypical way of ending the song in a jazzy way. Alright, so that's a real typical way. You probably have heard that in music. Let's start with the right hand. So I've got my F chord here, and I'm going to play the bottom two notes and toggle up to that top note F. Now I'm moving these bottom two notes down a half step chromatically. I'm still going up to my F. Then everything moves down a half step. And then I move to my regular F chord, the bottom two notes, and I'm going to use that grace note again. Let's hear that all at speed. In my right hand, I'm using the dominant 7, this E flat, and going down chromatically. Let's hear that again. Now to end it, I'm going to an F9, but I'm approaching it with an F sharp 9. That's written in the PDF, so you can look at those notes. But if you play jazz, you might know an F sharp 9 descending down to this F9. So my F9 is kind of like my E flat 9. I've got my regular F chord with the 9 and the dominant 7 here. That root note is in the bass, but I'm approaching everything a half step up. The whole chord, bass note and all, starts a half step up and then descends down. So that whole ending. And then you can gliss up with your backhand up to the F. So now let's put everything in context with the vocals. You probably want to set up some sort of an intro like, and then you're into the song. Happy birthday to you. Happy birthday to you. Happy birthday, dear so-and-so. Happy birthday to you. And there you have it. Happy birthday. Well, thanks for watching, and I'd love to hear in the comments how this and other videos have been helpful for you. And I'd love also to hear about some future ideas. I'm always looking for some new ideas to help people in their worship ministry. So send me an idea, whether it's a song or a topic or a concept, anything that you'd like to learn from the Worship Keyboard Tutorial YouTube channel. Thanks again for watching, and before you sign off, make sure to check out some of these other videos. We'll see you next time. Bye.